Hey everyone, it's Sachin Patel. I hope you're amazing today. I'm really excited for today's interview. I've got a dear friend, Jodi Cohen, and she's going to be discussing essential oils. Specifically, we're going to dive deeper into the vagus nerve and how to use essential oils to help stimulate healthy function of the vagus nerve, not just stimulate it, but stimulate healthy function. Jodi's a founder of Vibrant Blue Oils, and this is an oil that I actually use on myself and my son nightly. So we're going to be talking about one of my favorite oil blends that she has, and some other cool essential oil facts. Essential oils are an amazing plant derived medicine that they've been used for thousands of years. But I'm going to let the true expert in this conversation share more. So welcome, Jodi. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So I know we've actually been trying to plan this for quite some time. I think it was in the ether for quite some time, and now it's finally happening. So I'm excited to dive right in, and really start by learning more about you. So there's obviously all kinds of different essential oil companies out there. There's so many different blends out there. I want to learn about you first before we get into the oil side of stuff.
Yeah, so I had been practicing nutrition for quite a while and came across my own personal stumbling block. I had been doing way too much and my adrenals pretty much collapsed, and nothing, no supplement, no diet. It wasn't really helping. And I don't do well on pharmaceutical drugs because I'm a slow methylator, so things stay in my system for too long. And a friend just came over with a bunch of essential oils and said, "These are going to help you." And I was so open to anything at that point that I thought, why not? And I had been testing supplements for my adrenals. And so I just texted the box, like, oh, let's see if anything will help my adrenals. I got 5 oils, and not knowing anything about essential oils, I thought, well, I can make a blend. So I just tested each oil individually, how many drops, put it on my adrenals, on my low back, and felt like myself for the first time in a month. My kids were really little. The house was a pigsty. We needed to go to the supermarket. I needed to do laundry. I was superwoman that day. I cleaned the house. I cooked dinner. I did all laundry. I put it away. I went for a run. I was like, wow, that worked well. And then that night, you get them to bed and you're wide awake but exhausted. And I thought, well, maybe something will help with my pineal gland. So again, I formulated a combination, put it kind of around the head to stimulate the pineal gland to release melatonin, fell right asleep, and just kept making up remedies based on my knowledge of physiology and structure. And pretty soon was feeling like myself. And all of my friends in the nutritional community were like, oh, that's interesting, let's try that. And it seemed to work for them. And then when I finally had my cognitive function back and I went online to research oils and why is this working, I was really struck by 2 things. I was super surprised, first of all, that no one was formulating blends that address different organ systems and regions of the brain. And also that they made it so incredibly complicated that if I had started with research and not intuition, I would have felt completely unqualified and never would have gotten into the fray. So, because I don't believe in reinventing the wheel, and there are amazing companies out there that I think do really good jobs, but no one was looking at it through my particular lens, I decided to put the company out there.
I love that. I love it's almost like you were called to do this, right?
Yes,
And it's a
I
natural
feel
thing.
like I was.
That's amazing. So, sometimes people can get lost in the science, and, you were spiritually called to create these blends. What does that feel like? Like, how do you describe something like that to somebody? Because I know that we're all put on this planet, we're all called to do something. Sometimes we don't quite know what that is, but can you describe that feeling? So those of us that might be experiencing this type of spiritual calling in other areas of their life might be inspired to step into it.
I almost call it a download. Like, I know this is old school, but that movie, The Matrix, where they plug the program into his brain and suddenly he knows jujitsu. I will be in yoga or in the shower or running, and suddenly an idea will pop into my head, and I'll think, that's really interesting. I wonder if that's true. And in my old life, I was an investigative reporter. I actually won several awards for being a good researcher and journalist. And so then I go and research that and think, is that really true? And I will find every single time research that backs it up. And sometimes it comes into my life in a really surprising way. I have a 15-year-old daughter who, for her science project, had to find a Nobel laureate to do a report on. And so she went on this little, 3-question app, and they matched her with a Nobel Prize winning researcher, actually from Seattle, who did all this research on the olfactory nerve and how it worked. And the most fascinating thing, I had been looking for this kind of research. This woman identified that very specific odor, how odor molecules kind of communicate with the brain. Like, for example, our sense of smell, we have 5 senses. The sense of smell is the only one that goes directly into the limbic system. It's almost like a switchboard. All of the other senses are routed to the thalamus first. And that's because odor is so tied into our ability to stay safe and sensing predator odor. So she identified the part of the olfactory channel that kind of lit up when predatory odor was stimulated. And then she thought, I wonder if there's anything that cancels that out, that cancels out that fear response, that stress response. And it turns out rose essential oil does that. And for anyone who's played with oils, we all know how rose is immediately calming and soothing, but we might not have known that there's research behind it, that it actually blocks that stress response. So that's a really great thing for somebody who's feeling anxious and stressed all the time.
Nature has created some amazing solutions, hasn't she?
Yes, exactly.
It's pretty remarkable. Okay. So I love that. I love how this story starts. That's usually the most exciting part is learning about your passion and really what drives you. So then maybe tell us about some of the different things you've discovered along the way. So you said that nobody was really creating. I know that a lot of oils are created based on symptomology, right? Or
Yes.
conditional,
Yes.
treatments or whatever. But you're saying your oils come from a different, essentially lens or paradigm that you're viewing the use of
Well,
the oil from.
yeah, the nutritional paradigm that I studied was looking at the root cause. Like, it's very much like not just putting the bucket on the floor to catch the leak dripping from the ceiling, but to fix the leak, to figure out what's out of balance. Is it your digestion? Is it your blood sugar? Is it systemic inflammation? Is it detoxification? And one thing that they didn't get into is the brain, because it's really, really hard to get the right remedy into the right region of the brain. This is a big problem with treating cancer in the brain. The brain is super selective, just like the gut. It has its own selectively permeable blood-brain barrier membrane. And the only thing that really gets through is super small molecules that are fat soluble, like essential oils. So working with oils, it opens up this entire new playing field to get things into the brain. And we know in working with the gut and working with inflammation and working with blood sugar, we're trying to balance the body, but the body and the brain are in constant communication. And if that communication isn't flowing evenly or is misfiring, then the right signals aren't getting sent. And it's really hard to get someone back into health if you can't kind of align that communication. So anything that you can do from the brain down to align that communication is going to make a huge impact in their health. And what I love about it is whatever protocol they're doing, be it a gut healing protocol, a detox protocol, a blood sugar balancing protocol, if you can align communication with the brain, it just amplifies the effectiveness of what you're already doing. It's like biking downhill with the wind at your back, as opposed to trying to bike uphill in the wind, in a thunderstorm.
You know, I love that. Thanks for sharing. So one thing that I'll say is just to give some of the listeners some context here. We bumped into each other um, at Mindshare recently, and you said, you know what, there's all this information on the vagus nerve, but do you know what? Nobody's talking about the toxicity of the vagus nerve. And that was actually, to be totally honest, my first time hearing about the vagus nerve in that context. I didn't even know you could have a toxic vagus nerve. So
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? And let's talk about how you've actually created a solution for that.
Yeah, well, if you think about, the vagus nerve, for those of you that don't know, initiates in the brainstem, winds around both sides behind the ear. This is where it's most accessible to the surface, and then winds through almost every organ. And what it does, it's a two-way information highway. It's sending signals from the brain to every organ in the body and signals from the organ back to the brain. And when you're dealing with a client that might have multiple symptoms, like they have a racing heart and they have gut issues, you always need to think of the vagus nerve, because the vagus nerve is the connection between all of those. And what happens, if you think about where the vagus nerve travels, it's the neck. The neck is really kind of the highway in and out of the brain. what resides in the neck? Well, the nerves, obviously, your vascular system, and then your lymphatic system and your structure. If any of those are out of alignment, they kind of put pressure on the vagus nerve, and especially lymph. You know, when you sleep, your brain actually shrinks, and your lymphatic system and your brain, your glial cells kind of partner up. It's called the lymphatic system, glial lymphatic system. And it's almost like a car wash. Your brain shrinks and they just clean out the brain. And then the drain is right here. And this is where lymph gets really super congested. And so think about it. You have toxins, almost like we went to the Elton John concert last night, and getting out of the parking lot, like you just can't move. So I was thinking about that with the lymphatic system. It's stuck. So what happens? The toxins hang out here. Nerves have a really high affinity for toxins, especially metals. So they absorb them and they get stuck, and that toxifies the vagus nerve. So you can activate it all you want, but until you address the root of the problem and help to detoxify your lymphatic, your vascular, you know, getting your neck in alignment, it's going to be really hard for this problem to go away.
That makes a lot of sense. So tell us what the solution is.
Okay, well, there are multiple solutions, but the one that I personally find the easiest is essential oils for two reasons. Because they're transdermal, they go right through your skin. Like you can tell if you put something on your skin and it still feels greasy, it's not absorbing, right? If you put oils on your skin, you don't feel it. It goes right in and it activates the nerve. And this is why I use blends. I think that single oils are amazing, but when you combine them, it's almost like you get the best of both qualities. So I like a blend of clove, which is super stimulatory, and lime, which has super small molecules. So it gets right in there. And the other benefit, prior to like our modern medicine, clove oil was used in dentistry to detoxify the mouth. So if you think about the nerves that are kind of linking together, you have your trigeminal nerve, right? Where all of the toxins in the mouth, any dental amalgams, cavitations, root canals, gum issues, all of those microbes, and there are a lot of them, are draining to try to get out and drain down. And they intersect right here with the vagus nerve. So if you're carrying toxicity here and it's like, you know, trying to get out of a big concert parking lot, you know, traffic jam, they're just going to linger and they're going to start to impact the tissue around it. So putting a blend of clove and lime right here, it does two things. It stimulates your vagus nerve. So all of the downstream function, you know, digestion turns on. You might have a bowel movement. This is the same reason that smoking a cigarette or drinking a cup of coffee kind of have you have that instant bowel movement, because they're activating the motility wave. But at the same time, you're also helping to detoxify all of the microbes and pathogens and metal that's here. So it's fixing the problem and addressing the symptoms simultaneously.
I love that. So it's two oils you said. It's clove and lemon. Or
Clove and
lime,
lime.
I'm sorry. Lime.
Yeah. And we do it, I mean, the way I look at it, you know, so many of us go through that period where we're baking our own bread and we're making our own jam and we're doing everything, and it's a lot of work. And so now I go to the store and I buy gluten-free bread. I don't bake it anymore. So people who have tons of oils and they're really comfortable blending, they can just combine clove and lime. You know, if that's not their bailiwick, I have a blend that I've made for them. The other great blend for kind of brain function is lymph. Lymph is really hard to get flowing because unlike your heart, it doesn't really have its own pump. That's why things like dry brushing or anything that puts your arms over your head, like yoga, is so good. But we've also found that certain stimulatory oils, like mint is really good, can really help to open up the vasculature and just help things to move and flow.
So do you have a blend for that as well?
We do. We call it lymph. And what we've found, what's interesting to me, like for anyone who's a foodie who goes to restaurants and you look at the menu, you think that is a very curious combination of ingredients. I wonder what that's going to taste like together. And then you order it and you're like, that was amazing. I never would have thought to partner those things, because when you combine things, it changes them. There's a synergy where the sum is greater than the parts. And so that's what I really love about blends. It's almost like a mathematical equation, right? If you ask someone, how many ways can you get to the number 20? There are infinite ways, right? How many ways can you kind of create something that opens vasculature, encourages flow and movement. And there are many ways to do it, just like there are many ways to activate the vagus nerve. I have found a combination that works, that if you want to invent it yourself, go for it. If you want to just say like what's working for other clinicians, then I've got something for you. But it's really great because if you can get everything flowing together, like I don't know if you've ever watched any synchronized swimming or dancing, when they're all moving together, it's just this beautiful harmony. And so if you can get your body to start moving together and not fighting each other, modulate your immune system so your immune system is actually not overreacting or underreacting, modulate your stress response. It's a lot easier to heal when your body is working with you.
Listen, I'm all up for the experts doing their thing and
Yeah.
me as the end user doing my thing, which is using the product. And so I highly recommend and endorse the parasympathetic oil. I actually apply it on my mastoid process every night before I go to bed, since you told me, and actually apply it on my son's mastoid process and my wife's mastoid process. And it's actually become a nightly ritual for us. And so we actually enjoy using the oils, and knowing the love and intention that you put into them, also adds a tremendous amount of value for us. Cause I know that, when people are offering their product or their service, and it's built off of a framework of service, which yours is, then I can totally get behind that, and I love that. So tell us more. I mean, this is exciting. So we've got the parasympathetic and the lymph, and then is there a time that you recommend putting the lymph oil on? How do you suggest applying that, or is there a particular time, or do you apply it with the parasympathetic oil as well?
Um, there are a lot of answers for that. It's like, how much salt do you add to your food? So part of it is personal preference. What I do with the parasympathetic, because we haven't even gotten into the autonomic nervous system, the nervous system toggles between two states, the fight or flight sympathetic state and the rest and digest parasympathetic state.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the vagus nerve that helps you kind of flow between them. And ideally, during the day, you're meant to flow, you're driving and someone's changing lanes and might not see you. You're sympathetic so you don't die. Then it all sorts out. You park your car and you go back into parasympathetic. So just having the vagus nerve, it's called vagal tone, that you want. And it doesn't mean that it's working really hard. It means that it's adaptable, that it can flow in and out of stress and keep you in resilience.
Mm-hmm.
The example I use is sometimes you're in traffic and someone cuts you off and you don't really care. You're like, whatever, it's a pretty day. Maybe they're in a hurry. And other times the same situation and 4-letter words are flying out of your mouth. And the only difference is your resilience in that moment. And so the more your vagus nerve is able to kind of toggle between stress and relaxation, the happier you'll be. It just makes life so much easier. And it also allows you to perform critical body functions. Like when your body thinks it's not safe and it needs to survive, it shuts down everything that's not relevant to survival. We talked about this. Your blood routes away from your digestive organs and your organs of detoxification to your limbs so that you can run really fast. It dilates your pupils so you can see. It turns off your ability to anti-inflame. It turns off your immune system. So everything that you really need for healing, if you're in that stress state, really isn't working. So to answer your question, you can use it as many times a day as you want. I have friends who traffic is terrible in Seattle. They tell me it's the only way they can drive. Like they basically keep it in their car and apply it probably, every 10 minutes. At a minimum, I tell people to leave it by their toothbrush and use it, when they brush their teeth in the morning and at night, because that helps make it a habit.
Mm.
If you can apply it just right behind your vagus nerve before meals, that's great. For the lymph oil, I put it on both sides of the neck. And then it's interesting, if you talk to body workers, the body doesn't drain lymph evenly. It seems to be the left side that does a lot more of the work, like 75% of the work. So it drains down the neck and then through the left clavicle. So putting it on the left clavicle, that tends to be a bottleneck, and just helping to open that up and move fluid. It's like someone equated it to when the garbage trucks go on strike in New York. They take the garbage out of their house, but then the streets have a whole interesting smell of their own. You
Mm.
actually have to make sure that the toxins are leaving your body. The other key areas are where the lymph nodes, are kind of they're not congested, but really under the arms and along the bikini line. But even if people only do the neck and the left clavicle, that will make a huge difference. That alone, I feel like, helps people flow, because I think most of your listeners are pretty healthy. They're eating pretty clean, they're doing everything right, but they're not quite there yet. So if they can take away two things from this conversation, just activating and detoxifying the vagus nerve and opening up the lymphatic channel on the neck and the left clavicle, that will really help move your healing forward in a really profound way.
Well, one thing I'll say is I do want to acknowledge everyone who's listening and tuning into this because they're at least, it tells me they're on a health journey. And some
Yes.
people are just starting that journey. So this is like radically new information for them. They don't even know what the lymphatic system is. And some people are further along in the journey. They might even be clinicians that are watching us today, and they're looking for solutions to get the lymph moving. They're looking for solutions to, improve the resilience of their patients and improve vagal tone. And they might not know this information, right? Especially if somebody's got amalgams and that nerve is sensitive to those metals and it's so close in proximity, and then you've got the lymphatics that aren't draining properly, you can see why people have brain fog and sleep issues and hormonal imbalances, and their temperament is not where they'd like it to be. And if it's as simple as applying this plant medicine for people, then I'm all for it. I'm always looking for really simple solutions that work. So I do want to comment on a couple of things, because I know that some people have this question. At least I had this question a few years ago: is does the oil itself, does the smell make a difference? Like, are there any, besides the nice smell, are there any properties to that smell and interaction with our brain that makes that oil work the way it does? Or is it just a nice bonus that the oil has a certain smell to it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you look at Linda Burke's research, she basically says that certain parts of the brain register different odors. And so certain parts trigger. Um, People get confused and they think that essential oils release hormones. That's not really the way it works. It's basically that the odor stimulates certain parts of the brain, like your hypothalamus, which then release hormones. So it's not, if you think of a baton race, the first person isn't crossing the finish line. They're kind of passing it along, but it
Mm.
does help with the forward momentum. But I do think certain orders, but I also think one of my goals is to really empower people to trust their own senses and to notice what works for them. Just like you might crave a hamburger when you need iron, or you crave chocolate when you need magnesium, certain smells will smell really attractive to you when your body needs that. And I've noticed that, for example, we have a combination that we use to help with the gallbladder, to help kind of mobilize bile and optimize the gallbladder so that it functions more efficiently and bile is released to emulsify fat and to carry toxins out of the body. And when you need that oil, that blend smells like heaven. It's so delicious to you. And
Hmm.
if you use it for about a month and your gallbladder gets back in the right rhythm, it won't smell as appealing anymore.
Hmm. There's a intelligence in this whole process then, and kind of an innate understanding then.
Yeah, well, and even your ability to smell, like certain oils, the nose cells are actually brain cells,
Hmm.
and it goes directly into your lymphatic system or limbic system. Sorry, it goes to your lymphatic system too, but your limbic system. But just like if you eat at a certain point, you stop being hungry. Smelling at a certain point, you stop smelling. So it's kind of an interesting test, to put an oil here. I'll just show you, like a certain distance from your nose, and it's usually at some point between 3 to 7 breaths. So that's one thing that people diffuse, oils in their house 24 hours a day. That would be like popping an aspirin every 5 minutes for 24 hours. It's too much. It's very
Mm.
concentrated. Diffuse maybe for like cycles of 20 minutes twice a day. It doesn't need to be going 24/7. So that's one thing I think is really important, is that less is more and a little goes a really long way.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's one of the things that people might have a hard time wrapping their heads around, because these work essentially at the atomic level, right? At the molecular level. And so a little bit of oil really can go a long way. It doesn't
Yeah.
take much to make a big difference. Um, you talked about the bile, the oil that stimulates the bile, I guess it's production or release of bile. What other products do you have? And actually, I'm interested in the bile mover because one of my friends right now is dealing with some gallbladder issues, and we've made some recommendations like castor oil, but I'd love to know what essential oils you feel are
Yeah,
also beneficial.
basically, this is getting a little weird, so sorry, newbies, but there's this idea that every organ has its own frequency,
Hmm.
vibration, and plants and humans are fairly synonymous. They have similar vibrations, which is why we eat plant-based diets or the ethically raised animals that feed on the plants. It flows between humans and plants, and you can combine different plants, just like you might combine different colors. We think about we have the three primary colors. Well, the world is full of more than yellow, blue, and red because we're combining them. And so we get a whole palette. You can combine different oils to match the frequency of healthy organ tissue. It's almost like when you're teaching a child to swim, you put them in a flotation device so
Hmm.
that their body starts to feel what it's like to stay afloat in the water. Or teaching them to ride a bike is a great example. It's a combination of weird skills. You're moving forward, you're balancing, and it's hard to predict when a kid's going to figure it out. For some kids it's 5 minutes, for some kids it's 5 weeks. It's just when their body clicks into, oh, this is what it feels like, and then you can take the training wheels off. By overlaying an oil that has the same frequency as healthy organ tissue, it helps that organ return to balance. It's almost like putting training wheels or a flotation device on the organ, and at a certain point the organ remembers, oh yes, this is what healthy function feels like. And we've had tremendous success. This is actually, I think you tend to attract yourself and clients. And so many women that have had children in their late 30s, early 40s, that gallbladder just gets really viscous and congested and can result in things like motion sickness or mild headaches above the eyes or pain between the shoulder blades, subtle symptoms that are not terrible enough that they motivate us to like necessarily get help, but it's really annoying. It's annoying to go out on a boat and feel motion sick, or to not be able to sit in the back seat of the car. So supporting the gallbladder with just a little bit of the oil over the gallbladder on the right side of the body, even twice a day, can make a huge difference. Katie Wells' assistant was headed for a gallbladder surgery, and she kind of tried the oil as a last resort and was able to avoid surgery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
what's that oil called?
Gallbladder. We make it really simple to help people figure it out. The other one that people really like is adrenal, because as you know, your body needs energy to heal. And what tends to happen with the adrenals is they either overwork or they get so exhausted that they can't work.
Mm.
The adrenals are the organ that triggers the release of cortisol, the stress response energy hormone. And so it can feel like being caffeinated. You're really anxious and busy until you just can't function and you collapse. And there are great remedies for the adrenals. There are things that can help them produce more cortisol or calm the cortisol level. And then there are herbs, adaptogenic herbs like rhodiola and licorice that kind of help balance the middle. So if you're too high, they bring you back to center. If you're too low, they bring you up. This blend of oils is more of an adaptogenic herb. It just helps you balance. So what I love about that is that sometimes I've worried, but before I had oils as a tool, if I was putting on someone on an adrenal stimulant, I was like, am I whipping the horse too hard? So this way, it's kind of a no-brainer. You never overwork or underwork.
Okay, I love it. So, so you've got the gallbladder, you've got the adrenals, you've got the lymph, and you've got parasympathetic. What else is left?
Oh, everything. We really tried to, there were people that were looking at oils based on chakras, so kind of regions of the body. And when I looked at that, I realized, oh my goodness, if you look, kind of the third chakra is around the gut. You've got the pancreas, you've got the gallbladder, you've got the liver, you've got the spleen. You have all these different organs, the stomach, that have intestines, slightly different vibrations. And so we really have taken every single organ in isolation. And a lot of people, it is a bit like a puzzle, right? You create the frame first. Most people do the outside and then you fill it in. So
Hmm.
they're kind of the foundational outside pieces. You really need to be in the parasympathetic state. You really need to be sleeping, and you really need to make sure that your lymph is flowing. Those are kind of the foundations. We actually put it together in a brain reboot kit to make sure people address those first, because so many people get in and start to heal the gut, which is great, except it's kind of like taking out a bunch of garbage when the garbage trucks are on strike. when you're addressing the gut, you're killing off things you don't want. But if they're not leaving your body, then they're getting reabsorbed and maybe moving to other places where they cause damage. So after that foundation is in place, then we really get into specific organs. We have one for the hypothalamus. We have one for inflammation, which is great both if you have, I have a lot of clients with lupus, so they've got localized pain like in their fingers or their knees. And then it also, if you put it around the brain, it helps to anti-inflame the brain. That's one of the biggest challenges with inflammation, is that once it turns on in the brain, it's hard to turn off. This is where the vagus nerve is super critical because it triggers the release of the anti-inflammatory neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which helps to kind of calm inflammation and do a lot of other great things in your body. So you can, all roads lead to Rome. You can try to hit these things from a lot of different angles. You can engage in an anti-inflammatory diet so you're not adding fuel to the fire. You can activate your vagus nerve to release the anti-inflammatory neurotransmitter acetylcholine. You can apply oils which actually are able to cross the blood-brain barrier and can serve as that off switch for glial cell activation in the brain. This is one reason that frankincense is touted as this amazing oil for the brain. It's very high in this component sequestrins that help to kind of carry oxygen, and this is why hyperbaric chambers work. The more oxygen you have in the brain, the easier it is for it to heal. So it's just a question of how do you get more oxygen into the brain. Exercise helps, hyperbaric chambers help, essential oils help. There are lots of tools you can use. It's just whatever feels easiest for you at that moment.
Okay, amazing. And you've got like a series of different things for blood sugar support, for digestive support, fertility support. That's a huge topic right now. Tell us more about that. Tell us more about the fertility support that people um, can get from essential oils, because many people might not even think that there's a connection there. And so many
Yeah.
people are spending thousands and thousands of dollars trying to get pregnant. But I would love to hear some
Yeah,
of the
so
stories about that.
hormone imbalance really comes down to two factors, right? It comes down to your ability to detoxify and to get old hormones out of your system. Like a lot of people that have issues have what's considered to be estrogen dominance, which means your
Mm-hmm.
estrogen levels are too high. What that often equates to is that your gallbladder, which carries out old toxins in the bile is then dumped into the small intestine where it leaves the body, as stool. But what happens is either the bile isn't flowing, so the toxins don't leave, or they get reabsorbed in the gut. So you want to make sure your gallbladder, your bile is flowing, and then you also want to make sure that you're taking some kind of binder. Binders bind to the toxins and then help carry them out of the body. Things like charcoal, chlorella, psyllium husk. Those are all really good things to take. So you want to look at your detoxification pathway. So making sure that you're in the parasympathetic state to start. Parasympathetic right here, making sure that your lymph is carrying the toxins to your liver and your gallbladder. So lymph on the sides of the neck and the left clavicle, making sure that your liver, which performs over 500 functions, is actually working optimally. So we have a liver blend that helps with liver vitality. Then making sure that the toxins are carried into the gallbladder, that the bile is then flowing, and then that they're bound in the small intestine and actually leave the body. So that's a really important way to kind of, it's like if you're exposed to toxicity, if you're living in a moldy place, you want to stop the mold, you want to stop kind of the problem. And then the other aspect of it is stress. Stress is prioritized over hormone production. So the raw material for cortisol is called pregnenolone. And pregnenolone can either be used to make hormones or it can be used to make cortisol. And if you're in chronic stress, it goes to cortisol. It's called the pregnenolone steal. So the more you can kind of balance your body's stress response using the parasympathetic blend, making sure you're getting good sleep with circadian rhythm, helping to balance your hypothalamus and your adrenals, the more you can ensure that the hormones that will allow you to get pregnant and be fertile are actually driving the process. So it's just setting your body up for success.
Amazing. What's your number one selling oil?
Parasympathetic, hands down.
Okay.
It's the fastest. People ask me, how quickly do the oils work? And it really depends. Rome wasn't built in a day. If you are mildly constipated, you will have a bowel movement immediately. It works immediately, and people can tell right away. If you've been struggling with Lyme disease or some other chronic illness for 20 plus years, it might take a little while for your body to get back in balance and reboot. But people right away, most people love the smell, and they can feel a difference immediately.
Well, I can certainly tell you that I do enjoy the way it smells and enjoy the way that it makes me feel. It does beg a question for me, though. Um, and if you've ever, maybe you've done this already, but I'd be certainly happy to test this for you. In my family, is HRV data before and after using these oils. Has that ever been researched?
Well, I have an Aura ring, and I'm always looking at my own personal data, but I would love that. And if any of your readers are listening, we'll give you guys a free gift, which comes with a coupon. We have a 30-day guarantee. If anyone wants to test that and give me the feedback, because I know that's my own experience, but I've never issued a formal like let's check that out challenge. So absolutely, that would be wonderful.
That'd be pretty cool because there's a lot of us in our, at least in our mindshare community, and I know there's probably a bunch of people watching this right now that are either practitioners or, avid health enthusiasts that might have an Aura ring, and that would be a really cool thing for us to track. And then if we have this data, we can see people's, points going up 10, 20 points after using this for a month. I mean, that's pretty profound, and it gives people not just subjective information, but now objective data that they can allow you to use and then spread that message even further.
I would love that. It's a new chapter for me. As a journalism major, I'm not necessarily creating the news. I'm looking at what other people have already broken, but what a fantastic idea to start doing my own research. I love that.
Yeah, that'd be really fun because then you have like essentially bulletproof evidence that this works, right? And it certainly it helps when we can have testimonials like this, like me sharing the products and how they're working for us. But if we can have hard data that's irrefutable, then that would be really cool for you. And I'd love to get your products into more people's hands because I know the intention that goes into it. I can see the thoughtfulness that goes into the product line, and you've made it really simple. So if people go to the website, they'll see that the oils are very clearly labeled as far as what they do. The kits are very clearly labeled, and the efficiency to me is very important because if you've got to buy a whole bunch of different products to make a blend, then that's going to end up costing you way more than just buying the blend and using it because it's already the key is that how quickly can I get moving on this and take this action. And so if you can get that oil immediately, start applying it, you're going to see some dramatic differences. And I didn't tell you this before our interview started, but my son, he's actually going to be working with essential oils as part of one of his companies that he's building. I'm going to help him with it, of course, but he's going to start creating crystal bracelets, and we're going to put a few beads, lava beads, in there. And I'd love to incorporate some of the oils that you're using
Oh,
so that we can help the kids
absolutely.
focus and stuff. So we'll talk more about that afterwards. But
Yeah. Well, and that's
just
another thing that I should mention. You know, there are a lot of modalities that when you combine them, it
mhm.
amplifies the synergy. So that's one of the reasons that I tell people to apply oils on very specific reflex points because it really amplifies what that reflex point does.
Wow.
And the other thing, oh, there was one other comment I wanted to make. Oh, that a lot of the clients that I work with, they're so overwhelmed. Like the early experience of any kind of illness is like brain fog, overwhelm, fatigue. If it feels hard, they won't do it. And
Hmm.
I've noticed a lot of the vagus, nerve activation techniques. You can get an invasive device implanted on your ear, which is uncomfortable, but they're all uncomfortable. You can gag yourself. You can have your old ice bucket challenge and splash your face with freezing water. Anything that, because the nerve runs through so many organs, anything that activates any of the organs that it innervates, like deep breathing through yoga, meditation with deep breathing, that turns it on. So, for example, it touches the gallbladder. So you can do a coffee enema and stimulate the gallbladder that way. It's a lot easier to take like 1 second. Like I'll just show you. It's basically I flip the bottle and go like that, and I can put it in my pocket. That just felt, I was noticing compliance went way up the easier I made things. If
Hmm.
I pre-blend it for them, if I tell them exactly how to use it, because I think there's a lot of anxiety that, oh my gosh, I'm doing it wrong. And that almost makes it worse. It just feeds that whole victim, I'll never get well mentality. So the more you can take away any uncertainty or any difficulty and just say, boom, just do this, put it by your toothbrush, do it when you brush your teeth. All of a sudden, it's already linked to a pattern and a habit they already have. It's done for them. It just makes it so much easier for them to actually execute and see success. And then it's an easy win.
I love it. So this does beg another question for me, because one of the things that we work on with our patients is parasympathetic tone, because hey, you only heal when you're in a parasympathetic state. And then we also work on their hypothalamus, and I know you've got a blend for that too. And in combination of cleaning up their diet, realigning their circadian rhythm, getting their hypothalamus to kind of hit a hard reset, we help them lose tremendous amounts of weight. And I don't know if you have any testimonials or stories that you could share about weight loss, or if there's a formula that you recommend or a blend of formulas that you recommend that can help people with weight loss, because I
That's
know
that's
that's a big one.
exactly what I recommend, interestingly, because we don't realize, we think we're hungry. We don't realize that it's our satiety signal. Like when your parasympathetic state, when your vagus nerve isn't communicating from your gut to your brain, you don't know when you're hungry. Your gut could be completely full, but somehow it's not sending that message to your brain, so you keep eating. Same thing with the hypothalamus. And I love that you use the word reboot. I keep talking about it. It's like, your phone glitches. And what do? You
Mm-hmm.
just reboot it and then suddenly it works. Well, how do you reboot your brain? I think oils are a really great way. So we have a hypothalamus blend that you apply right above your third eye. The parasympathetic you can apply on either side or both sides. If you have amalgams on one side, definitely apply it on that side. And then we have a circadian rhythm blend, which helps you fall asleep and get, basically your body is supposed to be on these cycles. There's a cycle when you sleep, there's a cycle when you wake, there's a cycle when you're hungry, there's a cycle when you're full. And when those rhythms get off balance, it's really hard for you to know, like, oh, I'm hungry, oh, I'm full. So that's when you start to accumulate weight. So the more you can kind of get people back in balance, the easier it is for their body to return to that natural set point.
I love it. I love it. I could talk to you for hours.
I know, you're very
This is,
fun.
thank you. This is a very fascinating topic, and I promise we're going to have you back on again,
I would love
uh,
that.
because I know that I'm going to get a ton of questions after people watch this, and we're going to make sure that we get those answered. And what's a way where people can learn more about your company, learn more about the products that you offer? I know you've got some great resources for
So I
education.
want to give you, it took a very long time to create kind of a parasympathetic checklist because it's so many different issues that are going on that
Mm-hmm.
I just put it all together so that people can look really quickly and say, oh gosh, like 3 of these seem to apply to me, so that they know, or they can show their clients and their clients will know, oh yeah, that makes sense for me to try this. So I'm going to give that to you so people can download that for free. And then the easiest way to get in touch with us is info at my company's name, Vibrant Blue, like the color, oils.com. And we try to answer every question within 24 hours. We can set you up as a wholesale account and you can learn a lot more. I just feel like healing doesn't have to be hard, it can be instantaneous. And the more you can help get your body into alignment so that it's easier to heal, the happier you'll be and the happier your customers and your clients will be. So I just really want to help people, make healing easier.
Amazing. I love that. So I'm going to close with this. I'd love for you to share your favorite essential oil story.
My favorite essential oil story has to deal with one of Elisa Song's autistic clients.
Hmm.
One of my nieces is on the spectrum, and so I know personally how stressful it can be to have, to never know if you can go out to a restaurant or what you're going to get. And so, one of the interesting things with autism, Stephen Porges, who wrote the polyvagal theory, was talking about how autism is often the vagus nerve isn't signaling, and some of the characteristics that we equate with autistic kids, like just the way they're kind of moving, they're trying to self-stimulate the vagus nerve. And so Elisa Song had her client apply it on his 12-year-old son, and he basically said it changed his life. Like, this kid who was always tantruming and acting out could be calm. They could suddenly go to a restaurant with him. He could suddenly focus. The teachers were like, what are you doing? Because
Hmm.
he was a different child in class. It just allowed this kid, and kids, I really do believe that no child wants to disbehave or misbehave. I really think that they're just in pain and they can't control themselves. And the more you can help a child ground, center, show up as their best self, the more that just allows the family to have a pleasant experience, and really allows that child, you know, what I've come to realize is that you cannot control what happens outside of you. You can't control how people treat you. You can't control, if an accident happens or not. There are certain things you have no control over. The only thing you can control is your own response. And if you're able to get into that parasympathetic, grounded, self-regulatory state, you can handle a lot more. And if we can empower, especially our sickest of our sick, our children, to really get into that inner space of calm, we'll just be able to treat each other better. And that's kind of the small step I feel like I can contribute to this planet, is helping people feel safer and feel more grounded so they're able to show up as their best selves.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Jodi. This has been very enlightening for me. And, I'm excited. I'm certainly going to look at that bottle of oil through a different lens now. And I can certainly sense all the work that you've put into it and the love that you've put into the product. But now I have a little bit of the science and explanation. I'm going to explain this to my son. That's my homework, is to explain it to him so that he understands the power of the oils. And I'm actually going to make sure that I tell my colleagues as well to learn more about this, because this could be a very effective tool, especially because people are tired of taking pills, right? Let's face it, the pill burden has gotten so high. And if we can lower that pill burden, make things, safer, easier, and more cost effective for people, that's the direction I want to take healthcare in. And I appreciate that you've already created a solution that we can tap into and share with our audience and also with our colleagues. So much love and appreciation for that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. And if you feel compelled, which I hope you do, especially if you're watching all the way to the very end, like you are right now, please share this message, because many people unfortunately suffer in silence, and it could be someone that you love and care about very dearly. And this is a solution that could be very beneficial for them. I've tagged Jodi in this post, so feel free to connect with her, and also make sure you reach out to her company if you have any questions, and they're happy to answer those questions for you and point you in the right direction so you can make a good decision for yourself and for your family when it comes to choosing the right oils. Thank you once again, everyone. And thank you once again, Jodi.
Thank you.